And breaking overnight, a new, different possible constitutional showdown. This morning, President Trump is claiming that the sweeping pardons that President Biden issued before leaving office are, quote, hereby declared void. Trump asserts it is because of the fact that they were done by auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. But more importantly, Trump says he did not know anything about them. With us now is former Manhattan prosecutor Jeremy Solin, who is with us by phone. Jeremy, I'll keep on looking this way here. So talk to me about this. Jeffrey Toobin, our friend, just wrote a terrific book on pardons and notes that it is probably among all the president's powers, the one that is most unchallengeable, the one that is most absolute. If President Biden pardons someone, President Trump can't unpardon them.
Yeah, that's generally a fair statement, and there's nothing in the law and the Constitution that says explicitly it has to be signed. So, he's going after President Biden's faculties, but, the question is what this is setting up for. This is just an effort to maybe make an extended version of going after other things as well, though one would think that President Trump should think this through, because if successful, that means that his potential pardons, whomever they may be, can be challenged in a similar manner down the road. So certainly there's an issue here, but you're correct. This is a pretty liberal right or ability of the president.
And again, the issue of auto pens. Auto pens are things that presidents have used for decades, often to sign legislation and orders. Does the use of an auto pen make anything more or less legitimate than signing it by your own hand?
It does not, and I believe this has been back since roughly Truman that auto pens have been used, give or take. So this is something that is not new. This is not technologically an advancement that, wait a second, now the president needs to go to the Court of Appeals and up to the Supreme Court to say, hey, can you use an auto pen? This is a power grab, for lack of a better term, by the president, to effectuate whether that's revenge after people he doesn't like on the January 6th committee, whether that's Jack Smith specifically or Fauci. One doesn't know, but it's certainly to move his ends, whatever they may be.
What happens then if someone does try to commence a legal investigation into someone who was pardoned by President Biden? If President Trump does follow through with this, how does it get stopped or sanctioned?
Well, ultimately it could find themselves in the court, but in a court of law. But one of the issues that I think everyone should be concerned about is the rule of law has to mean something, and we're seeing challenges to Birthright just moments ago, talking about whether or not the deportations are legal and they have to be followed by the court's order, or the Trump administration will do what it deems it wants to do. So ultimately, it may find itself in the court, but it should never be there in the first place. There's a rule of law. There is a pardon. There's certainly questions whether you can pre-pardon someone. I understand that, but this is not the means to effectuate it by just blanketly saying at a tweet at night or a Trump True Social at night that they must be vacated.
Pushing the boundaries of the law and Constitution every which way. Jeremy Solin, thank you very much for all of your analysis on this. And Mark Preston, to you, this pardon issue. Donald Trump, the president, claiming the ability to unpardon someone. Ellie Honig says not even dead on arrival, dead before arrival. But why do you think President Trump is doing that overnight? Again, politically.
Again, let's go back to Donald Trump is going to throw everything against the wall, and some of it is going to stick and some of it is not. What could have happened last night is somebody might have mentioned something to him about the J6 committee. It could have been any number of things that just infuriated Donald Trump. But I will tell you this, and I don't think people, I want to go back to the word underestimation, is that Donald Trump is incredibly powerful right now, and his ability to steamroll Democrats is only making him more powerful. I will say, though, to Errol's point, a year from now, when we see all these cuts and where they've taken place across the country, that's where Republicans, specifically on the ballot in the midterms, they're going to have a problem.
It is interesting, Errol, that we saw all this activity on immigration, albeit that has been a main focus of President Trump throughout this administration, but the deportation is very public, very flashy. You see this social media post overnight, very public, very flashy about unpardoning people, coming at a time when there's been a lot of focus on the economy, a lot of public focus on the stock market, wondering if he's trying to maybe draw focus from something that may be something of a dark spot for his administration.
I mean, there's a policy, you can almost call it like the political flashbang strategy of the White House, where they'll say, we want to buy Greenland. Oh, we want to annex Canada. Oh, we want to turn, Gaza into a Mediterranean resort. And it's trash, right? It's not serious. It's not going to happen. You have to keep an eye out because some of the talk about January 6th was just talk until he summoned a mob, Donald Trump did. But with that caveat, a lot of this is just intended to distract us because, as you're pointing out, the main issue, and ultimately it will always be the main issue when you're talking about elections, is the economy and what's happening with it, and the management of the markets, and the tariff question that he's put on the table, and the costs that he has inflicted, and the mass firings of federal workers. That's what he doesn't want us to talk about. He wants us to talk about, hey, is he going to unpardon a bunch of people, or can he take over, Gaza and turn it into a resort? People shouldn't be distracted.
I do want to talk to you about what we saw Donald Trump write on social media. Here's what he said. This is a completely different subject and another potential clash with the Constitution. The pardons that Sleepy, as he put it, Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. They are subjected to investigation at the highest level. Can he do this? Can he say the pardons are void?
No. No, legally,
and we're
this
done
is
here.
Dead on arrival. This is a ridiculous sideshow. Yeah, right, there you go. Look, the key question with the pardon power is what was the president's intent? We've had auto pen for decades. No presidential action has ever been invalidated or undone because it was signed by auto pen. And while the pardon power itself is extremely broad, there is no such thing as an unpardon power. This thing feels to me just like a rabbit hole. I wouldn't even pay it that much mind. There's no way this is going to actually happen.
On this notion of unpardoning, what do you think President Trump is up to here?
Well, I think it's both comical and chilling. It's comical because it's ridiculous to say that you can unpardon someone or that the auto pen had anything to do with anything. And this is classic Trump. He distracts when he wants the public to look away from the economy tanking because of his insane tariffs, Wall Street way down, people's 401ks getting hit, people's safety and security being put at risk. So this is a huge distraction on the one hand. On the other hand, it's him pushing legal limits the way they did, as you just reported, around the migrant deportations. And that's chilling because it sounds a lot like a dictator when you say, I am voiding the acts of my predecessor.
Lee, on that point that Matt was just making on the deportations, whether it was a direct defiance of the judge's order or whether it was intentionally pushing the boundaries thereof, it is a fight this administration seems to want to have with the courts.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, this is something the president has promised. It's one of the things that won him the election. He said he was going to deport. He said he was going to get rid of the criminals. He said he was going to do all of these things. And he pushes boundaries. And he also is a big fan of big symbolic gestures that get a lot of attention. And this is exactly what that did. And in many ways, his supporters are going to look at this and say, it's a fight worth having. And it's absurd that we would want these people to come back, that we would turn this plane around. And so I think this is one of those moments where Donald Trump is doing this with a theater of it on purpose to get the attention, because one of the areas that he's winning on the most in polling is immigration. His approval numbers on immigration are so high across the board that he knows this is an issue that wins for him. And I think in many ways, he's trying to compensate for some of the other areas where he's not doing quite as well.